Thank you.
I'm going to speak about the motion, first of all. We were all down in the Mansion House 2 weeks ago at a very dignified and very moving ceremony which commemorated the first Dáil. And very much central to that first Dáil was the democratic programme, which was written by Tom Johnson, the leader of the Labour Party, which was adopted by the first Dáil 100 years ago, and which said that the first duty of a parliament or a government was to look after its children. And that is the central tenet of this motion. And I very much respect most of the people who have contributed to the debate in good faith about this really important issue. We are now a relatively wealthy country. We have recovered from the worst economic crisis that has ever befallen this country, where budgets were reduced by a third. And in the worst of times, the Labour Party in government, with Fine Gael, protected some of the most vulnerable of our citizens, and we will not take the kind of attacks that have come from other people, absolute stonewall abuse in this House. Now, other people speaking before the two Healy-Raes referred to various decisions that were made. Of course, they didn't refer to the fact that the Labour Party in government presided over the introduction of free GPs for under 6, SNAs, extra resource teachers in schools, the second free preschool year in the absolute worst of times. And just for the record, it was the Fianna Fáil Green government before the Labour Party came into power that cut €8 off every single social welfare recipient because the economy had collapsed, because the bank guarantee had been implemented, which we voted against, because there was no money. And any minister who had to cut their budgets was doing it because they were in an impossible situation where they hadn't enough money. They literally had to cut instead of expanding. You know all that. So, look, that is the background. But we are now a developed country. And quite honestly, we are going to have to take this up with the Ceann Comhairle, because it is not acceptable for those kind of names to be called within this chamber. And I'm here a fairly long time as well. And normally, the point of order would be taken and the person who made the charges would be asked to withdraw them. And I don't know whether you intend to do that or not, but it certainly should be done. We've put forward this motion in good faith. We want to see a focus on child poverty. We want to see, now that we have recovered financially from an economic crash that most people didn't expect the country to recover from, where if we were in some other countries, you would have had much more serious cuts than what happened here in this country, where we did protect the budgets insofar as we could, and where we are proud to be members of the Labour Party with our values and our ideals. And we will put forward this motion whether some people like it or not, and we're happy that very many people in this House have said that they support it. Now, probably the most important element of this is that we want child poverty to be measured, we want time frames, we want quarterly reports to ensure that we gradually move towards a situation where consistent poverty is steadily reduced. And I have to give credit to the current government, because it is actually reducing, and was reducing when we were in government as well, but not fast enough, very slightly. We need to reduce consistent child poverty. The way to do that is to measure it with time frames and to trace it to ensure that it happens, and that all government departments, and Deputy Rabbit referred to the fact that there are other government departments that are involved in this, not just the Department of Children. So that's the main thing that we want to achieve in this motion, and we want that to be cross-Dáil support. And that's what this is about. It's not about throwing names at other people. I particularly want to address the issue of child homelessness. There are nearly 4,000 children now in our country who haven't got a roof over their heads. And incidentally, in terms of the statistics, there has been a 14% increase in child homelessness in the last year. And it has increased consistently over the last 3 years. And the right to a home should be a basic right. It should be a basic right, particularly for children. And while we did put children's rights into the Constitution, we didn't, in fact, put the kind of legislation that's necessary in order to implement those rights. And one of them is around child homelessness. And we presented here a bill called the Housing Family Homeless Bill, which was passed through this House, which has gone to the committee and is now sitting in the committee waiting for the government to respond in relation to a money message. I strongly urge that that bill be implemented, because what it does do is it ensures that housing authorities and the government will have to ensure that the needs of children within a family are prioritised, so that you wouldn't have children being taken to Garda stations, for example, when they're homeless. That bill needs to be implemented. But probably more importantly, we can actually address the shortage of housing. I was at the Raise the Roof conference last week, where Mel Reynolds, a very much respected architect, indicated that there is enough local authority-owned, zoned land for housing to build 50,000 units of accommodation nationally, 30,000 of those units in Dublin. Now that would address, if we used our state land to have publicly led social and affordable housing built on state-owned land, we could address the housing problem. And that is what the Labour Party is calling for. We have costed proposals for 80,000 social and affordable homes to be built over 5 years. That is the scale of delivery that we need, but we need the will to do it. And we can do it, and I think that's the important message here, that we actually can address child homelessness, and we need to. We also need to prevent homelessness, where, for example, again, I was at a conference this morning in relation to youth homelessness, where there was a gentleman from Wales talking about how there's an obligation now in Wales and in England, I think as well, to inform the local authority well in advance of people becoming homeless. We can also prevent homelessness by ensuring that people are not kicked out of their homes because of unreasonable hikes in rents, and because, for example, the landlord says they're selling the property, or they need it for somebody who's a fairly distant relative, or they're going to do up the property. We need to close all of those loopholes and keep people in their homes. I was talking the other day to a woman who is living in a hotel with her 2 children, and she said to me she's really concerned now about the children in school. Her son, who's older, is trying to pretend to his friends that he doesn't live in a hotel because he's ashamed of it. Her daughter, who's much younger, her behaviour has changed completely in school, from being a quiet child to now being quite a disruptive child. And that's the kind of, terrible changes that come upon children when they don't have a secure home. So these are the kinds of issues that we want to highlight. We also want to highlight the whole issue of children with special needs, and others have done that in relation to the gaps that are there in services, and again that has been raised by others. In relation to also children with mental health issues, where the CAMHS teams are not fully filled. And indeed, there are many other children in particular situations, like children in direct provision, children in traveller accommodation, all of whom have really, particular problems, and who do not have the opportunity to reach their full potential and need the kind of supports that we're advocating here. Also children who can't even get their access to their parents, and Deputy Burton has published a bill in that area. And same-sex couples who also don't have full rights in terms of their parenthood. So these are the various areas that are covered in our motion. But it is about, in fact, fulfilling the aims of the First Dáil and the democratic programme in particular. I think we owe it to our republic to now ensure that we focus on these issues, that we do actually fulfil this vision and this intention which was there at that time. Now, there have been many difficulties throughout our history since then, and many reasons, sometimes because of conservative Ireland, sometimes in the case of the more recent history, when there simply wasn't any money there because of the economic collapse. But we are now in a position where we can address these issues, where we can actually focus on all of the children of the nation having the opportunity to develop to their full potential. And we need a whole-of-government approach to that. We need it to be dealt with in the areas of education, of health, of the Children's Ministry, and particularly of the Housing Ministry, because the worst, I suppose, deprivation in many ways that a child can have is that they don't have a secure home of their own. And we can address that issue if the will is there and if the funding is put in there. So that's what the motion is about. I welcome the very positive contributions from many members in the House here. I think it's very unfortunate that the entire intention and spirit of the motion was thwarted by some members here who chose... Please let
let the Deputy finish, please, uninterrupted.
Who chose the path?
Let the Deputy finish uninterrupted, please.
Who chose the path of personal abuse rather than the responsibility we all have here as elected representatives to address the issues and the most crucial issues that concern our citizens. And the most crucial of those is to ensure that all of our children have the opportunity to be the best that they can be.
Thank you.